like growing
Okay.
up, because like we kind of grew up in the same music scene, and then we kind of
Yeah.
stayed in the same music scene a little bit. Like I definitely got more into metal and stuff like that, but like we kind of went from like the '80s punk scene to like hip hop and shit, like right, kind of like a lot of us in that generation, especially a lot of kids who grew up in the punk scene, because the original hip hop scene was like, it was almost the exact same thing. It was just a bunch of fucking people who were pissed off at their lot in life and using music to
Uh,
express it. So I think for me, it was definitely like it was like rap music was easy for me. It was protest music. It was just like punk to
right
me,
on.
you know?
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of, I mean, you were involved in the Houston like '80s punk scene, yeah?
Yeah, I was sort of a sort of a wallflower,
Well, I
just
mean,
because.
I kind of was a little bit too, because I was so
Yeah,
young. I was so much younger than everybody.
yeah. I was that, and then too. I mean, that was another big difference between me and everybody else, for the most part. And so yeah, that was a natural sort of awkwardness. Um, but yeah, I would go, I would hang out. I had a couple of friends that I would go to shows with. So it was, going to those shows and then going to see like early hip hop shows, back in, LL Cool J shows, Big Daddy Kane shows, stuff like that. And then, going to see too, like the big bands. I mean, I was, if Rush was in town, I'd go, if, that kind of thing. So, yeah, I was fortunate because, I had, my mother was like the old like hippie, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
grew up like I knew what Jimi Hendrix looked like before I ever knew what he sounded like, because I was an old poster hanging above the fucking freezer in the garage, and
Sure.
so
Yeah.
so I grew up knowing that stuff. So at a time when I was, by the time I was 11 years old, like I knew Frank Zappa and the Mothers. I knew Hendrix. I knew Zeppelin. I knew all that stuff. And then my dad was really into like old blues, old like
Mm-hmm.
Stax Bolt music.
Sure.
My dad liked all that, O.C. Smith and all of that kind of stuff, the Philadelphia sound. So I grew up with this like total that were no boundaries musically for me. And I knew it enabled me to like, I could kind of like identify with a lot of different crowds, So like if I'm at school, and the white boys were talking about, fucking, dead Kennedys, I'm like, yeah, yeah, I know. And then if my other boys were talking about, Stetsasonic or something like that, I'm like, oh yeah, yeah, I know. Like I got no fire, man. I got the new record. Um, and then in like sort of elevated discussions of music at a young age, like how how blues transitioned into rock and roll, and even like really scarce stuff. I mean, I was like really, from the time I was a kid till now, real big fan of like 1970s popular rock and popular music.
Mm-hmm.
I still believe the 70s was like the best decade for popular music. The shit that would get on the radio, the shit that would make top 40 in the 70s was like, it was like a roll of the dice. It could be like fucking, it could be Disco Duck, right? Or it could, or it could be Starry Night by Don McLean. I mean, it could be like heavy, like it could be Alone Again Naturally by Gilbert O'Sullivan, like really heavy shit, or it could be like that little instrumental song Popcorn. Yeah,
Right.
that shit,
Right. Right.
right? So I mean, the freedom of the 70s, I don't think we'll ever have that again. Like as far as popular radio, like the
Right.
the general public seemed to be a whole lot more open minded musically, at least in the 70s. So
Yeah, that is a super good point that I never really had considered. That yeah, the '70s was a weird time for music, like just in general. Like like if like in the '50s, you got this new thing called rock and roll, right? That like came out of like blues and jazz and that kind of stuff, and then the '60s was this like it was the 60s. It was like folk. It went from kind of like folk music. It went from like super boring white people music to like folk music, which is kind of the same thing depending on who you ask. And then and then you got like everything from like 66 to 70 that was like, I mean, that was like world changing music,
Right.
like, you got the Beatles and the Doors and, the Stones and fucking Crosby, Stills and Nash and like all this like insanely talented dudes. And that's like only like 10 years after Elvis, which is weird. And when you think of it that way, but then, like in the 70s, I guess, because like, I think maybe after the end of the hippie era, like all of those people were still around. And then a lot of people who had started during that in the industry ended up in higher positions. And then they were like, well, this is how it's done. You just give people a chance to see what the world likes. We'll just put it out there and see what the world likes,
Yeah. No, I think, it was just this freedom. Like all of the, the gatekeepers, the money dudes. Frank Zappa had a real cool interview.
I was just going to bring up the Zappa thing.
Yeah, he broke that shit down, how it was like, when those money dudes who are the gatekeepers, when they like suddenly open. I tell a lot of artists that we saw the same kind of thing. We saw the same phenomenon in posters in the early 2000s. Basically, when the money man look at this sort at a sort of alternative scene, and they see like, oh shit, that's money to be made, right?
Yeah, right.
All right. Well, at that point, dude, there's like this window that opens temporarily, where like anybody who can do anything that can hold somebody's interest can make it. Like so like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
So like in the 60s, you saw like right when the fucking Summer of Love, all that shit started, then dude, if you played hippie rock and roll music and you had a thing, like they'd sign you, right? Same thing happened in the late 80s, early 90s up in Seattle. Like if you sound grunge, I mean, like but the same thing happened with poster art in the late. When all of those people suddenly turn their eyes to poster art, and Grushkin and King put that book out, right?
Yeah.
That was a period where if you were smart and you were on your game, you could get in there and find your tribe somewhere,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And those windows, think about it, same thing happened in designer vinyl toys, dude, from 2005 to maybe about 2010, 2012, where if you got in, you could stay in.
Right. It's the vinyl toy thing is like, it's so, there's so many pieces getting made all the time now that I can't imagine it's got to be hard to make money. It's just such a saturated market.
Well, it's hard to make money if think about it. You were in the, like, the poster thing. So like, think about it. When we were in the poster thing, imagine what imagine us trying to do what we were doing in 1997. Mm-hmm. Imagine trying to do that now. The competition.
Right.
Like, because everybody wants to be a poster artist, right?
Is that still something people want to be? I don't even know. I'm so far away from it.
No, you know what they want to do? They want to all make movie posters.
Right. Yeah.
But I mean, it's like, it's the same way with toys. Like, if you are just coming into the toy scene now and you're trying to get on,
yeah,
good luck, man. I mean, but it's like, but when, in 2005, it was very different, man. It was like,
yeah. I remember at the time thinking, like, seeing a lot of toys and being like, there's nothing being made here outside of some of the really cool shit, like some of the cause stuff that was getting done, that I was like, man, I could totally do this. And like, right. I never was able to parlay anything I had into anything. But then I did those little triangle resin pieces, and then Frank ended up publishing those for me for a while. I actually have a new one of those in production that's getting sculpted right now. So there's going to be another piece of that little series.
Right on. No, man. Yeah, that's how it is.
But yeah, like going back a little bit to that revelation about the 70s, which is a really good one. And your examples are fantastic. Like you could get Starry Night, or you could get Popcorn, or you could get, Disco Duck, or you could get, Al Stewart, Year of the Cat. Like,
Exactly, man.
And it's funny because my wife, we constantly have music, going through the streaming in our house all day. And there's like several, like I have my channels and she has her channels, and she has like a yacht rock channel that plays like a lot.
Yeah, I listen to Yacht Rock and the Bridge on Sirius XM. Fuck yeah.
Dude, totally.
It's good stuff, man.
But yeah, it's like, like listening to there. I really literally only have like, there's like a couple of those artists from that time period that I have like an absolute will not listen to. I know this is one of the ones that I've heard you say you really liked before was that band Bread.
The Bread has some jams, dude.
No, dude. No. It's like there's some things that are so soft that I can't. There's nothing to grasp onto there. There's just nothing to grasp onto.
That time period like presents, like if I had to list like my top 10 songs of all time, like a bunch of them come out of that period. Like, I mean, like you mentioned Year of the Cat. Year of the Cat is one of the greatest songs ever made, dude.
Agreed.
I mean, that song is perfect in every single way.
I don't disagree at all. That song is fantastic. Al Stewart's fantastic.
Al Stewart is one of the most underrated. You listen to that, even that Year of the Cat record. I mean, songs like On the Border.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what's that? The Time Passages record.
Time Passages is a great song too.
Oh, dude. I mean, the dude is just, he's an amazing, but see, that's so many artists like that. Gilbert O'Sullivan, who is famous for Alone Again Naturally. Okay?
I don't think I've ever heard any other song by Gilbert O'Sullivan.
Okay, dude, look, I'm telling you now, get on Spotify or whatever you use. Dude, that dude has some songs that like you will listen to and you will go, how is the world operating and nobody ever talks about this song? Like, dude, he's an amazing musician, but the 70s is full of guys like that who, songs that you don't think of. That guy, Rupert Holmes. Now, Rupert Holmes, his famous song from the 70s was the Pina Colada song. You remember that?
Right, yeah.
If you like Pina, you know that song? But he had other songs, like he has a song called Him. H-I-M.
Mm-hmm.
And you listen to it and you're like, God damn it. I mean, because the production, you listen to bands like that, you listen to like the Alan Parsons Project, the production on those records, dude. Oh, dude, I don't care.
Alan Parsons, what I learned about Alan Parsons, and I swear to God, I'm not going to be able to pull up the right information, but he played on other really famous records and produced other famous
Dark Side
records.
of the Moon, dude.
Right, there you go. He was a Pink Floyd guy. I learned about that from a guest that I had on. These two women who are in a group called Dance Loud, who do like EDM music, and they're like obsessed with Pink Floyd. And they like they're a couple, and they live in a house together. And so all they do is work on their music, and all the way to the point where they're like, we're going to learn how to do all the production. We're going to learn how to do all the engineering. We're going to learn how to master our own records. And they do everything themselves. And they were talking about Alan Parsons and like his production stuff. And I was like, fuck, I didn't even know that. All I know about Alan Parsons is The Eye in the Sky, you know?
Oh, dude. It's so one of my top 10 songs, man. He did a song on that same record, on that record with Eye in the Sky on it. A song called, and it's like one of my theme songs, dude. The song is called I Wouldn't Want to Be Like You. And it just sums
sounds
up.
Familiar. I guarantee I've heard it.
Play it. It's one of those songs that has one of those. First of all, I love the message because that's my theme song to so many people, dude. I don't care what you do. I wouldn't want to be like you. But also, dude, like it's one of those songs. Here's another thing: the 70s had songs with these great low-key guitar solos. Right. I don't mean the rock and roll guitar solo, but I mean just a low-key, like here's one for you, and this is not 70s, this is early 80s, but like if you listen to like if you listen to like Journey, okay.
I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I was getting into punk rock when they were famous. So I was always against
Journey. All right, well,
but I'm familiar.
Yeah, I mean, and even we talked about Year of the Cat. I mean, that guitar solo, that little guitar
solo. There's like a
solo
sax solo in that. That's fantastic too.
The sax outro,
right?
Like it's just, but that's because those artists, dude, were like fucking like genius studio musicians.
Yeah, for real.
I mean, you had guys that just could get in there and they just like knew that instrument, and.
Right.
And they could, and then you had these producers who were just,
well, yeah, and that's the thing too, is like, kind of, touching a little bit back is like, it was a time when singer-songwriters were given all the time and money in the world to just make something that they wanted to make. And I think it was a little more hands-off than things became like in the 80s and since. Right. I'm sure if you asked all those dudes, they'd be like, oh, the money guys had their hand up my ass the entire time I was making this record. Yeah. But for us, in the story, one of my other favorite like sax solo, guitar solo songs from that era is Baker Street. And it's funny because it's such a mellow song, and then it's got that ripping guitar solo in it. Oh, dude, yeah. Totally.
Hey, look, dude, let me tell you something, man. Jerry Rafferty, that's another
Steelers Wheeler, man. Like the brothers, dude. The Rafferty brothers.
Jerry Rafferty, man, that City to City record, and songs like there's a song, I think it's the first song of side 2 of that record called Maddie's Rag.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a song he wrote about coming off tour because he hated touring. He hated it.
Well,
and he would come off touring. Yeah. And he wrote this song, and dude, the melodies, and at the end of the song, that's just sort of like, this is another thing that's lost in music, dude, and in music, period, all forms. Artists of the last 20 years, man, they don't know how to do the outro. They don't know how to do the fade out shit. Like,
yeah.
And that it's those songs back then, like a song like Year of the Cat, right? It just fades out, and it's like this dreamy, it's just like, it fades out. That all of those Jerry Rafferty songs, Baker Street, Right Down the Line, they fade out. And even bands that crossing into the 80s, like the Police were a great fade out band. Message in the Bottle is just sending out, and it just fades out.
Sure.
And bands today don't. That's an art that they just don't.
I feel like if I had to make some kind of just broad guess, it has to do with money and radio play. Like the radio is like, well, if the song just ends, we can get the next song going, and we can crunch songs in and then crunch more advertising in. And I'd guess that it was an industry-wide decision to like make more money. If I had to guess.
I love fade out. I love bands. My girl Joni Mitchell, who's one of my
yeah, I'm a huge Joni Mitchell fan. I was in love with her when I was like before I was like 10 years old. Like I just loved Joni Mitchell.
Joni Mitchell is badass, dude. Like that Court and Spark record is like,
dude, her cover of Woodstock is like it's like one of my favorite pieces of art ever made by anybody ever. It's so good.
Well, here's the thing. She wrote that song. That's her song.
Mm-hmm.
The Crosby, Stills, Nash.
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, she wrote it. And here's the funny part about it, dude.
Explain some things about that song, but go ahead.
Well, here's the funny thing about it. She wrote it, and she wasn't even there. She wanted to go, but she had to do an appearance on like some show. I feel like I knew that now. But she wrote it, and then like Crosby, Stills, and Nash got it and kind of rocked it up a little bit. But she, like, it's funny, dude. Her like well-known songs are not my favorite. Like, honestly, the Woodstock song is not my favorite. The Big Yellow Taxi, I can't.
Right. That's like the only song most people know by Joni Mitchell anyway, which is fair. I mean, that's fair. She She was not a pop star. Even in that time when all the rest of them became pop stars, all the people around her, she never really did. She just had that one song, and then she just kept doing her business. You know what I mean?
You know why, dude? Because you know why? I'll tell you something about Joni Mitchell. There's this great story I heard about Joni Mitchell, real short. When she was about to put out Blue,
Mm-hmm.
she had some friends over to her house to play it. She hadn't released it yet, but she wanted to play it for a small circle of friends. So she had, a circle of friends over, one of whom was Chris Christopherson,
Mm-hmm.
who it's kind of funny because like Chris Christopherson, you don't naturally think of that dude as like some kind of rock and roll royalty or whatever, but every kind of rock and roll story you hear, that motherfucker is in there somewhere.
Yeah, dude,
fucking
totally.
Chris Christopherson, dude.
Right.
So,
fucking mayor of fucking Topanga Canyon for fucking nobody. Like, you are right. That is weird. He is the most random.
He's like always there, you know? So like she played the record, and the record obviously is so revealing. I mean, it's just, that's why she's so badass. And I try to like, that's something for, I think, other artists, whatever you do, to imitate. Have the guts to go all the way. Like, you're either going to reveal or you're going to conceal. Have the guts to go all the way and reveal.
Right.
And so she like pours it out. And she said that that night, Chris Christopherson pulled her aside away from the rest of the group. And he said, Joni, the record is amazing. He said, but please save something for yourself. Like he was saying, you're giving away
too much.
And this is what she said, badass. She said, the people who buy my fans, she said, they love me so much, I figure that they need to know exactly who they're dealing with. And that's awesome. that is the kind of ethic that if you're an artist, but that kind of ethic, going back to what you said, most of the time will not equate into superstar, pop star, whatever.
Right.
Like, that's the kind of shit that you do your whole career, right? And then later in your career, people look back and they go, elite, God damn it, they were honest. Right. They were honest. They could give a shit about what was hot. And those are the artists that I like. I like artists who like, I don't care. I don't care that this is hot. I don't care that. You'll even find artists like that when they stumble onto something that they suddenly notice is like, oh my God, I've stumbled onto gold. Right. Like if I keep doing this, I'll just make a lot of money. And they literally will say, for that reason, I won't do this anymore. Like, and it's not, I'm not saying, to be all punk rock idealist, holier than thou, like, oh, I don't do it for the money. Because fuck that. I like money.
Yeah,
I like
fuck yeah.
things,
like
right?
You gotta have life,
But at the same time, I also like the freedom that I get from establishing a record of doing exactly what I want. So I'm never like, at this stage of my career, I'm never penalized for not doing the hot thing. It's expected that I'm going to do what I want to do.
What you wanted. That's amazing. I mean, I think that's pretty much, I think that having been friends with you for so long and kind of coming up at the same time and watching what you've been able to do with your career, I mean, you've been setting yourself up for that since the beginning. And that's amazing, dude. Like, that is to be congratulated. Dude,
thank you. It was accidental, man. Like it's not like I was not smart enough to I was just kind of like, what we talked about this before. I was just looking at my heroes and how they ran that thing. Mm-hmm. And like all the people that I looked at, they just sort of like, they were just, I sometimes say it, they were like, they were career suicidal, The decisions they made, you're like, what the fuck are you doing? And then later on, you look back and you're just like, God damn it, the honesty.
Right. Before I forget, there was the other artist that's on the absolute no listen in Mike's house zone from the AM Gold is fucking Fogelberg. Dan Fogelberg. I refuse to listen to Dan Fogelberg.
Hey man, you don't like the what is it? What's the song?
I don't like that one.
What is the song where it's like the leader of the band?
No, not the leader of the band.
Living legacy to the. Oh, you're talking about that old Anxiety song, like this. You know, like I ran to a chick that I used to know, and we talked in the parking lot, and
the really want to see it. Really want to see you tonight is like the song that I hate by that dude.
Dude, really? And no, he doesn't do Really Want to See You Tonight. Really Want to See You Tonight was by a guy named England Dan
and John Coley. Right. Oh wait, then what is the? Okay, then Fogelberg did. Yeah, it's probably leader of the band, but that Really Want to See You Tonight.
You don't like that song, man? That's kind of cool song.
I don't like that song.
Think about what the dude is saying. The dude is
I understand.
The dude is like saying, "Look, I don't want to move in, and I'm not trying to change your life, but man,
I'm just trying to get laid.
Beautiful night. I just want to see you.
I just try to see you naked. I think is where he was getting at.
Oh shit."
Yeah, it's like one of my favorites of that era is What a Fool Believes. And if you actually listen to the lyrics of What a Fool Believes, that one is truly amazing. That's truly amazing. The wise man has the
power to reason away. And then he says like what you choose to believe is always better than nothing.
Yeah, the lyrics of that song are amazing. It's amazing.
No, see, that's the 70s, man. Like those songs.
One of the things that always amazes me about that song is how he makes the lyrics work in the melody of the song. There's a lot. It's complicated. Like there's a lot of words in a small space in that song. It's amazing. I love that song. I like Michael McDonald.
Great song, dude.
But I'm a San Jose kid. I like anything Doobie Brothers related. I love the Doobie Brothers. Until Michael McDonald kind of took them to the pop town. Like I like Michael McDonald stuff by himself, and I absolutely love the Steely Dan stuff because I am an absolute Dan fan. Like in our house, Steely Dan gets listened to as much as fucking
Steely
James
Dan
Brown
is,
or anybody else. But love
yeah.
Steely Dan. And but yeah, once like there was the kind of division in Doobie Brothers from like, are we gonna stay like a biker band, or are we gonna like go and start doing all this pop stuff? And then Michael McDonald took over and was
Michael McDonald. That's because you got the definite like
was like Peter Cetera, the exact same thing to Chicago, right?
No,
like literally the same thing.
You got like with like the Doobie Brothers, you got the old Blackwater Doobie Brothers, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then you
China
got
Road.
It Keeps You Running Doobie Brothers. But here's the deal with you mentioned Chicago. All right, like
I'm a huge fan of pre-Cetera
fame
Chicago.
When what's the guitarist's name? I know his name. And
the guy who sang most of the stuff originally. I can't remember.
That motherfucker. Let me tell you about him that a lot of people don't realize. Yeah, he was. Jimi Hendrix was a big fan of his. That dude. If you listen to that first Chicago record,
yeah,
and those songs on there like Liberation and all that stuff, like that dude. But then like here's the beautiful part about it. And then I'm gonna tell you something that's gonna trip you out. But Peter Cetera comes on, and so you got like, for instance, you got a song like Beginnings, right? And you got old boy singing, he's a singing, ooh, and then you got Peter Cetera like it mixes so well, right?
Yeah.
And then Peter Cetera starts doing that "If You Leave Me Now" and stuff like that. That like good ass songs, right? But then when they got into the 80s and all that stuff, it's hard to say I'm sorry and all that stuff. I was like, yeah.
Exactly.
Here's a funny thing about Chicago. Chicago, dude, just to show you, like, everything is duality. There's always duality happening.
Mm-hmm.
Chicago is to white people what Earth, Wind, and Fire was to black people. Exact same thing. I like almost to the, I mean, the more masculine lead singer, and then the co-vocalist with the higher voice,
mm-hmm.
the long drawn out epics,
mm-hmm.
the pop love songs that eventually started to kind of take over. So when you look at like black people, like when you talk to some old head black brothers and sisters, like my aunts and my uncles, dude, Earth, Wind, and Fire. I mean, that shit come on. Earth, Wind, and Fire comes on, and it's just like, oh, you know. And I have seen old white people do same thing, man. When fucking Chicago comes on, man, they're like, oh. It's funny, but like from now on, think about it, dude.
That's amazing.
Chicago is for white people. And here's what's so funny. I think they know it. That's why a few years ago, they toured together.
Ah.
They went on tour
Somebody
together.
put those things together.
Yeah, dude, because they it's the same kind of thing. Yeah, it's weird. It's that duality.
Yeah, me and my, here in LA, we have the Greek Theater, which is an amazing outdoor auditorium that's like on the smaller side of a big venue. And me and my wife went to, they do a summer series, and it's always like kind of, it's like a broad range of different shows over the summer. And one summer we went and saw the Doobie Brothers with, who's the dude from the Eagles, Don Felder. Don Felder. And there was some other, some of those other retro acts on that. And that was awesome because it was the original Doobie Brothers. It was everybody but Michael McDonald. Man, they killed. They were so good. And then we also went to like the old school hip hop night, and it was like Sugar Hill, Grandmaster Melly Mel, like Rose Royce. It was
Rose Royce.
So good, dude. Who is the dude who does roll bounce, like Lamar Johnson or something, but like that roll bounce guy. And then they brought in like Mix-a-Lot, and Coolio closed the show. And it was like one of the most fun shows I've ever been to in my life. And it was funny. One of the funny standout things was like, you get Grandmaster Melly Mel, and you're like, well, I want to hear him do White Lines, right? Like, I don't really care what else he does. And then, that was Grandmaster Flash. No, wait, was White Lines was Melly Mel, right? Or wasn't Grandmaster Flash?
Let you work it out.
So, Melly Mel is on stage, can't do the whole song because he's the only one, and he had a crew with him when he did the original song, right? So he's only doing verses. And like all these old rappers, like Sugar Hill isn't Sugar Hill anymore. First of all, it's like a bunch of dudes who were never in Sugar Hill during the time that they were a thing. And it was the same thing. Like, you want them to do, Rapper's Delight, and they do like 2 verses. And then Mix-a-Lot comes out and he's like, yeah, you notice they're only doing a couple verses. I'm doing whole songs. And then he did like a whole song. All the Posse on Broadway, all the big butts, like all that stuff was awesome. And then I forgot that the headliner was Zap, which was, I'm a
Roger.
Huge, no Roger, but
well, I mean,
it was like all the family members. Like I think he's like sons and grandsons now are Zap.
Yeah, they're all doing this thing.
And I'm a huge fan of Zap. So that was like, that was a super killer show. So yeah, that's funny. Right that's on. Funny that we ended up like, I was like, okay, well, we're going to talk about like punk rock and hip hop. And then we just talked about AM Gold.
70s. No, I mean, that stuff.
That's amazing.
It's
awesome.
It's everything has that thread run through it, dude. And it's funny. Like I love to break down the music and how it relates to different scenes and communities and cultures.
Yeah, I mean, it's all, I mean, we're all kind of pulling things out of our mind into the universe, whether it's with our hands and a pencil or a paintbrush or a guitar or whatever it is. Like all of us who do creative things, it's like, you're willing the things inside of your mind into the world. And so they all kind of come from the same place for me. So any conversation about anything, related. And I mean, and then, to even kind of speak to the 70s was like, then you got like Ramones, Sex Pistols, Clash, Damned. You got all those bands who were like, we're not having any of this.
Yeah,
exactly. John Ford Coley nonsense.
Well, you think about it, dude. I was when the years that it was funny because like the years that I lived in New York, because I lived in New York 2 times in the 90s, and then I lived in New York. When I moved back here to Texas, I moved from Brooklyn. We were in Brooklyn for a little while.
I didn't know that. I thought you went from Texas to Colorado, then back to Texas. I didn't know you guys were in New York for a while.
I went from Texas to Colorado, and then I went from Colorado to Brooklyn. And then after a while, we did two bi-coastal living, I guess. We for a couple of years, we would spring and summer in New York. And then we would come down to Houston for the fall and winter because I was just over the winters up there. Yeah, it's cool, And so it was just a matter of, the downside is, my landlord wouldn't let me sublet my place, so I just had to pay the rent all the time.
That's not cheap in Brooklyn.
Yeah, but I mean, after a while, I held on to my place because I just didn't want to let it go. But after a while, I let it go just because New York is not. It's just not the same as it was, dude. It was, we would go up there. I mean, even where we lived, all of our neighbors, when we first moved there, everybody around us were artists and writers and dancers and teachers. When we moved, everybody around us had left, and we were surrounded by like Wall Street people. And dude, they weren't friendly. They didn't, when you were sitting out on the stoop, they come out, they don't speak or nothing, so it was just, and then everybody started leaving. Like all of my friends up there who were artists were moving. And
what time frame was this?
This would have been like late, like from 2009 or so to 2012.
Okay.
So anyway, when I was up there, sometimes I would go down. Yeah, every now and then I catch train, go across, 10 minutes over the fucking river and go into the city. And I would like stand there in the village. And I would just think to myself, dude, imagine like in 1977 on any given Saturday night. All right. You could literally go, like you could just show up at CBGB's and you could see, who knows this place, it could be Richard Hill, it could be television, could be the
Suicide,
the Dead Boys,
fucking
could
Blondie,
be the Stooges, Blondie. It could be any of these bands, right? And then if you wanted to, like, so you could hang out, right, for a little while, and then you could get your ass in a cab or on a train and go several blocks over and walk into Studio 54. And it's chic and Nile Rodgers, and it's like it was just like, and then if you like lived there and you knew what was going on, you could catch another train up to the Bronx or to East New York or to Brownsville or up to Queens, and you got hip hop shows going on in warehouses and in people's backyard.
DJ
and it's
Red
just
Alert.
Like, oh, dude, I mean, the 1977 in New York City was just, just the things that were happening in that 10-mile radius.
Yeah.
On any given Saturday night.
Yeah.
My God.
I think that there was definitely a time in Los Angeles where it was very similar, like probably between like 65 and 75, where it was like the same thing. It was like, oh, we're going to go over to the Troubadour and watch fucking Rod Stewart and Nilsson, Harry Nilsson. And then we're going to get in a cab and we're going to go over to the Whiskey and we're going to watch, fucking, I don't know. I can't even think of anybody. But
Morrison, dude. That's
right.
the house band, Doors. The house
Yeah,
band.
yeah. It was like, yeah, like, you know, even when I moved to LA, it was kind of like the glam rock phase was over. I moved in '95, so it was like grunge city, and the glam rock thing was like fresh. It was still a fresh body. And you could still see it when you went down to the Sunset Strip. You could still see those people now just wearing flannels and boots with ripped Levi's.
Wow.
But yeah, it was like the same thing. Like, you know, I lived, you know, a 5-minute walk from the Whiskey and the Roxy and the Rainbow Room, and it's like, you know, sometimes like on a Tuesday, I just like walk over to the Whiskey and see what was going on. And like one night I walked in there, and it was fucking Korn and Marilyn Manson, and I don't those aren't bands that I particularly care for, but at the time, like, they weren't anything, you know, they were just getting started, and it was like just a show at the Whiskey. It wasn't even a big deal. And then like within 6 months, both of those bands just were huge bands. Yeah, man, you can't beat living in a good city, man. You really can't.
Right. Well, no, like it was, you know, it's just, that's the thing though, man, is like you live long enough, you know, you start to learn that like golden ages are tricky that way. They don't present themselves on the surface.
Well, at
You
the
have to
time, you don't
be,
know you're in it.
well, that's what I'm saying. They don't present themselves on the surface. And even if you are like immersed in it and actually recognize the greatness that is going on and happening around you, it still doesn't connect, because for it to become a golden age, you must see what this thing happening around you, what it will produce.
Right.
And then you look back and you go like, oh shit, I had no idea that I was soaking in it, you know? But
yeah, like that's like totally for me, that's like the 80s like hardcore scene, where it was like, just, you know, as a grown man looking back at what my life looked like between like 1984 and like 1989, and like what I did with like every weekend. I got to see every single band that ever went on tour ever, like from like a band who could barely make it touring because they just weren't big enough, to like fucking Social Distortion and the Dead Kennedys, and fucking, you know, like I saw Faith No More open for Suicidal Tendencies. And when I say open, I mean they were the first fucking band, like on a bill of like 8 bands. And it's like, just to be able to like look back and see like just, it's like you know, for me, I mean, that is where I was forged as a human being, was from that, you know, like that, just that whole DIY thing of like, you know, 16-year-old kids putting out their own records because they figured out how to contact a fucking pressing plant instead of waiting for a label to put out their record, or renting out the, you know, the Elks Lodge down the street and getting, you know, some big enough name band and then a bunch of local bands to play. And like, now, you know, it's like how Golden Voice started. Golden Voice, one of the biggest promoters in America, like started as like 16-year-old kid, you know, like renting an Elks Lodge. You know, it's like, It's just crazy, like, to me, to like look back. And it's like one of the things that I'm most fortunate about having been able to experience in my lifetime. And, you know, I've been through some cool stuff, and I've done a lot of cool things, and been, you know, as part of that poster explosion. I'm in all those books, and like, but looking back, like, I just like so fortunate. Only 2 bands I missed from that golden age were Minor Threat and the Misfits. And that was just because they broke up before I was old enough to start going to shows. By like a year, both of them by like a year. And they're like my 2 favorite bands of all those bands. Cool, man. Well, you know, I appreciate your time, and seems like a good spot to kind of wrap it up.
All right, man. Good deal.